Handicapper Steve here, handicapping the racing from Belmont Park here on Saturday. It is the 10th of June 2023. It's Belmont Stakes Day from Belmont, and I'm going to look at all the stakes races, including the big Belmont Stakes. But before I get on to that, remember to please follow me on Twitter at Horse Racing Kid 5 for more selections for race courses around the world, and I mean it around the world. First things first, before I go any further, this card is a major improvement off of last year's Belmont Stakes card. I think you saw some good quality last year, but it wasn't the most competitive card in the world with the with the prices and the small fields. This year, these races all have big fields, and I think you can make some money with some of them. So that's number one. Number two, we have Tom Durkin back in the booth to call some races for Fox. That's gonna be quite cool. And number three, it's gonna be my first Belmont ever attending in person. For years I've been saying I wanted to go. Finally this year I bought the ticket, so I'll be at Belmont on Saturday. So it's gonna be quite cool. So hopefully I make some money. Let's look at the stakes races here. Races 3 and then 5 through 12. We have a lot of races to get to. Let's get to it right now. Starting off with the third race, it is the True North Stakes. It's a Grade 2 event going for a $250,000 purse, race for 4-year-olds and upwards. We have a field of 6 horses going to the main track. The distance of ground of 1,300 meters, if you want to go by that, or the distance of ground of 6.5 furlongs on the Belmont main track. 1,300 meters, 6.5 in the True North. And I show the diagram. It just gives me a second to look down my notes. Just bear with me. Sorry, I have like 5 pages of notes, so just give me a second to look down at them. My top selection, I'm going to go with the 5 horse here, Strobe. Let's go 5-4-1-2 in the superfecta. 5-4-1-2 super, top selection of 5 horse Strobe. This 4-year-old colt by Into the Mischief. Brad Cox trains. Florent Roux gets to mount for Godolphin. The horse's most recent outing came first time stakes quality horses on the 15th of April at Oaklawn. 6 furlongs in the Count Fleet Sprint Handicap, and the horse finished second by 2.25 lengths against Skelly, who was the next start winner. This horse just kind of sat back early from a stupidly wide poster. He was a little bit wide. He was gaining late, but it looked like he wanted the 7 furlongs off that run. He ran his heart out off the bench. Coming here second off, see a strong pace in front to close with. I think he gets the job done and run a good race here today. 2 back, he ran on the 27th of January at the fairgrounds, 6 furlongs optional 80 claimer, and he won by 5.25 lengths that day. And from a tracking trip, he quickened up and he went away with it. A 101 Beyer is very nicely done, but keep in mind, I've noticed the Beyers have been coming up back just a little bit too high at the fairgrounds over the winter. I just found the little head scratcher Beyers there. And then 22nd December was the previous race fairgrounds, 6 furlongs optional 50. He won by 6 lengths, and basically on the front end all throughout with a 104 Beyer. He really took off clear. Very, very good race. He's trading well. He's definitely fast enough to get these races, this race won. I'll give him a shot on the ticket. I think his second likeliest winner is your Breeders' Cup winner, the 4-horse Elite Power for Belmont and Ira Ortiz Jr. Most recently, the Riyadh Sprint at King Abdulaziz Racecourse in Saudi, 6 furlongs, 25th of February. He won by 3.5 lengths that day, and he just stalked most of the race. He tipped out wide at the top of the lane, and then Frankie Dettori rode him that day. Basically didn't give him the stick. He won in a trot. 111 on the slow track. That was a good race for him there. Prior to that, the Breeders' Cup Sprint at Keeneland over the 6, he won by 1.25 lengths, and he sat back early. He slowly moved his way up, and he went away with it. A very good run, and I found it very cool for the Vosburg finally having a Breeders' Cup victor again. Prior to that, he ran at Aqueduct in the Vosburg, 7 furlongs there, and he won by 5.25. It wasn't the world's toughest race for him, but he basically won in a trot. A 101 Beyer, career best at the time, still a career best if you want to go by that. He's training well at the Spa on the Saratoga on the Oklahoma train track. At 4-5 in the early pick 4, I'm going to use him on that ticket. But to recap my selection for the third from Belmont now, it is the True North. Let's take the 5 horse Strobe. Give kudos to the 4 horse Elite Power, 5-4-1-2 Super, 5-4 in your multi race. The 5th event now from Belmont, it is the Poker Stakes. It's a Grade 3 event going for a $200,000 purse, race for 4-year-olds and upwards. We have a field of 8 horses entered. Keep in mind the 8 horse is an MTO, so 7 will go to the turf course. Hopefully, the distance of ground here of 1,600 meters, if you want to go by that, or the distance of ground of 1 mile on the Belmont Widener turf course. 1,600 meters, 1 mile here on the Widener. And we're going to get some rain on Friday, but I think the rain right now is the least of our, worries. I think with the smoke we've had here in New York City, it's ridiculous. Literally, on Wednesday I was in the city on Second Avenue, and I've never seen orange. It felt like we're on the surface of Mars, and to the point of when I came home, I was like, I don't feel like cooking. I ordered Uber Eats, and when they take the picture, if you've ever ordered Uber Eats, and you have them just leave it on your doorstep, they took a picture. It looked like one of those Martian samples of the soil that they do, with all the orange background. That's how horrible it was here in the city. But I most likely they'll run Friday, Saturday. Most definitely they'll run, the races unless something weird happens. But if something weird happens, we might be seeing a Belmont next weekend, which I have plans. Might have to get canceled, but hopefully not. But my top selection here in the poker, I'm gonna go with the number 4 horse here, Dreams of Tomorrow, 4126 in the superfecta, 4126. 4126 Super, top selection of 4 horse. Dreams of Tomorrow, 6-year-old horse by Spicetown. Shug McGahee trains. Manny Franco gets the mount. 12-1. Most recent outing came the 11th of May here at Belmont. Mile 16th on the inner turf course in Optional 80, and he won by 2 lengths. The inner turf course here at Belmont, especially with the rails out, they're only out 9 feet that afternoon, but with the rails out, speed holds up. He stalked. He got to the front and he quickened up, and he went away with a 94 Beyer. Wasn't the best of his career, but he still took off clear. He hasn't run against stakes quality horses in quite a while, but he's running these decent races that could definitely win against these horses. Not the world's toughest race, and I think there are some vulnerable horses in this one. 2 back in the Appleton at Gulfstream, 1 mile on the 1st of April. He finished 7 by 6 1/4 lengths that day. He was very wide, which cost him, breaking 11-11 on that very narrow turf course. He just never saved ground, and it just wasn't his day to win off the bench. And then the 17th of December at Tampa, mile 16th in Optional 100, winning by 2 1/4 lengths from a tracking trip. He quickened up. He went away with it, a career best 98 Beyer, a very good run. And then at Aqueduct, mile 8th on the outer in Optional 80, he finished 3rd by 3 1/4 lengths. The winner at Tone was a next start winner in the Pegasus. This horse just kind of stalked, and he closed up well, but he still needs something more there. He's done well here at Belmont the Widener. He's 3 for 2 locally. Most recent victory came here on the 15th of May of 2021 in an allowance race, going a mile, winning by 1 1/4 lengths. A horrible race where he broke through the gate. It was stupidly wide, but he really took off clear. Hasn't won. It was a little bit time between the races where he got the victor, but he's really become a better horse as of recently. He's training well. At 12-1, I think he could face these big boys, and it's not so deep poker. The 1-horse Chesbier wouldn't surprise me if he wins. He had a very easy trip in the Maker's Mark, basically a paid workout. He took off clear, beating home Modern Games, who was the next out winner in the Group 1 Lock-In Stakes at Newbury. Now, the Lock-In Stakes at Newbury, it's one of the premier mile races in Europe, so he beat good horses home. Up to the Mark was the next out winner in the Turf Classic at Churchill, and I believe running later in the day, if I'm not mistaken. But this horse just kind of, destroy them. That was this horse. He ran well, but he had everything his own way on the front end. He's not going to get it today. 2 back in the Tampa Bay Stakes, he just didn't fire there. He was just wide and just flat. As a favorite, he threw a clunker in, and then the Henry Clark last April at Laurel, he won by 5 1/4 lengths, coming home with a 100 Beyer, very good run there. And then at Tampa last March, he won quite easily. He likes fast ground. He doesn't like soft ground. He's going to see a lightning fast ground. It wouldn't surprise me, but even money, he sometimes runs these clunkers, and I can't take that at even money. The 2-horse here, Emirati, for Chad Brown and Jose Ortiz, hasn't been seen since Bernard Baruch, where this horse won it on the front end with some somewhat pedestrian fractions with a 101 Beyer. Prior to that, won at Saratoga, going a mile in Optional 80, closing up from nowhere on that inner turf course. He's done okay here at Belmont. Biggest question is, can he run off the bench? At 6-1, there's a pick 3 here that I might play. I'll use him there, but I think your likeliest winner here is Dreams of Tomorrow. I think he's up to the mark here to run against these horses. But to recount my selections now for the 5th from Belmont, it is the grade 3 $200,000 poker. Let's take the 5-horse Dreams of Tomorrow. Give kudos to the 1-horse Chesbier and the 2-horse Emirati. 4126 Super, 412 on your multi-race. Let's get to the 6th event from Belmont. The 6th race from Belmont. It is the Brooklyn Stakes. It's a grade 2 event going for a $250,000 purse. Races for 4-year-olds and upwards. We have a field of 11 horses taking a lap around Big Sandy. The distance of ground is 2,400 meters, or 1 stroll around, which is 1.5 miles in circumference. 2,400 meters, 1.5 miles here in the Brooklyn. A race very rich in history. It's been run at Belmont. It's been run at Aqueduct. It's been it's always an exciting race here. It's been run at a mile 3/8, a mile and eighth, a mile 6 furlongs. It's dive into the Brooklyn history. You'll like it. But with that being said, my top selection, I'm gonna go with the 4-horse Bright Future. I'm gonna go 4-2-7-5 in the superfecta. 4275 Super, top selection of 4-horse Bright Future. This 4-year-old colt by Curlin, Tom Pletcher trains when Iratis Jr. gets the mount. The horse hasn't been around 2 turns. You don't say this very often, but he's trying 2 turns for the first time, going a mile and a half. I probably said that sentence only like once in my life, if that, before this video. But most recently, the horse ran around a 1 turn on the 6th of May at Churchill, 1 mile Obsolete Claimer, and the horse finished 3rd by 2 1/4 lengths that day. And he said mid-pack most of the race. He had a decent turn a foot late. He ran okay, but they were flying on the front end, 109 and 3 3/4. They were setting it up. If he sits close today, that should suit him well. He's bred to go the mile and a half. I think he could stay and run a good race here today. He ran his heart out on the 1st of April at Gulfstream. That was Florida Derby Day, 1 mile and allowance optional 25 claimer. He won by 2 1/4 lengths, and he stalked a quick pace. He quickened up nicely off of that, and he kept going. A very good, strong performance there. It was his first start since the 11th of June. That came here at Belmont last year. 1 mile in the allowance race, 92,000. He finished 3rd by 7 lengths that day, and he just was wide and just never really quickened up. I thought the other ones just went without him there. And then before that, mid-March at Gulfstream, 1 mile in main special weight, went by 4 3/4 from a tracking trip. He really took off clear. Very, very good run. He's definitely been on the improve with every single race. Going around the longer trip, I'll give him a shot here at 4-1. I do think his price will probably drift up a little bit. I think the 2-horse Red Run for Tyler Gaffalione, Mike Makers, your second likeliest winner. Most recently, in the Isaac Murphy Marathon at Churchill, 1.5 miles on the 2nd of May. He finished 2nd by a neck, and he had a great performance behind Warrant. This horse closed up from nowhere. He just missed late, but he ran his heart out that day. And then option 60 at Oakland, 1 mile on 7th of April. He finished 3rd by 3 1/4 lengths. Again, a little bit wide, but he was gaining that day. He's another horse. I think he could grind it out here. You'll probably see a slow pace, so he's not a deep closer, but he's a horse that looks like he'll slowly get into the race. At 6-1, I'll use him on the ticket. And also watch out here for the number 7 horse, Warrant for Flavian Pratt and Brad Cox. He finally won the Isaac Murphy Marathon, but he's the kind of horse that looks like he pulls himself up on the front end. He wants to stay for days, but when he gets there, he's just like, nope, I don't want to win. But he had to be used a lot that day. He won by a neck. It was a good 97 winning Beyer performance. Prior to that, in the Temperance Hill at Oakland over the mile and a half, he finished 3rd by 1/2 lengths that day, and he just he was with them early on, just kind of hit the wall. He ran his heart out that day. And then the Santa Anita Handicap at Santa Anita over the mile and a quarter, he finished 8th by 16 lengths that day. He just had a bumpy trip and never really showed up there. It's been quite a few times between races, but, between victories, shall I say. He won the Oklahoma Derby in 2021, and then his next victory was that Isaac Murphy race last time out. But he's always run these good performances between them. Or not the Isaac Murphy, it was the Fairgrounds race before the Santa Anita Handicap. But he's another horse. I think he wants to stay for days. He placed in this race last year behind Fearless. I'll give him a shot of 5-2 in that pick 3 we're going to play. But to recap my selection for the 6 from Belmont, it is the Grade 2 Brooklyn. Let's take the 4-horse Bright Future. Give kudos to the 2-horse Red Run and the 7-horse Warrant. 4-2-7-5 Super. 4-2-7 in your multi-race. 7th race from Belmont's going to be an exciting one here. It is the Ogden Phipps Stakes. It's a Grade 1 event going for a $500,000 purse. Race for fillies, mares, 4-year-olds land upwards. Field of 6 horses going to the Belmont main track. The distance of ground of 1,700 meters, or the distance of ground of a mile 1/16 on the Belmont main track. 1,700 meters, a mile 1/16 here in the Ogden Phipps. And this is quality. When I say Grade 1 quality, this is Grade 1 quality. You have just so good horses here. I'm going to take as a top selection the 2-horse search results. I'll go 2-4-6-5 in the superfecta. 2-4-6-5 super. Top selection 2-horse search results. 5-year-old mare by Flatter. Chad Brown trains. Flavian Pratt gets the mount here. He was having a very good under-the-radar meeting in the spring here at Belmont. Most recently ran the horse the 5th of May at Churchill. Mile 16th in the La Trione. This horse needed the race off the bench. I picked her that day. I shouldn't have picked her. That was one of those weird selections for me. She going through her running line, she always needs first off the bench. She finished 3rd by 3/4 length. She stuck. She just kind of hung a little bit. She probably wasn't 100% cranked. Come into Belmont where she loves running. I think she could get a good trip, and I think she could run and beat the other classier mares who are probably going to get bet into the ground. I think her price will float up, and I think she has a logical chance of winning here today. Two back in the Brewers Cup Distaff at Keeneland, a mile and eighth on the 5th of November. She finished 6 by 16 lengths that day off a little bit of a break. She just kind of stuck, but then got beat by better horses on the day. Mouth that really put on a show. And the personal ensign at Saratoga over the mile and eighth. She finished second by a half length. She stalked. She got the lead. Mouth that caught her late. But again, she ran her heart out there. And then the Molly Pitcher at Monmouth over the mile 16th. She won by 3. And from a tracking trip, she really put on a show that day with a 97 buyer. She ran last year's Ogden Phipps, and she was with a pace duel that day with the other horse. I can't think of her name right now. It wasn't Clairiere, but Latruska. This horse was with them early on, saying that wicked fast fractions, and it set up for the Mouthouts and Clairiere. But this horse, is just a weird, pace duel early on the front end. This horse just wasn't getting into it late in the race. And then she won the Ruffian over the mile here in the mud last May quite easily by 3 lengths, earning a 96 by second off the bench. She won the Acorn here 2 seasons ago over the mile as a 3-year-old. She's training well to this one, second off the bench. Like I said, going through her line, that's where she does her serious running. At 4-1, I'm going to use her. If there's a small upsetter, I think the 4-horse Secret Oath should run a good race. She kind of digressed a little bit in the La Trione, where she finished second by a neck behind Played Hard. Played Hard really, fought back that day. This horse, Secret Oath, she came from nowhere, but ran her heart out that day, but just couldn't catch Played Hard, who was game. Prior to then, the Apple Blossom Handicap, she placed behind Clairiere, who caught her, but this horse again ran her heart out there, setting the fractions, and then won the Azaria in her 4-year-old appearance very, very nicely. Training well at 2-1. It wouldn't surprise me if she gets a good race and wins. I'll use her in the pick 3, but I really like search results, and like I said, I think her price will probably drift up a little bit. But to recount my selections now for the 7th from Belmont. It is the Grade 1 $500,000 Ogden Phipps. Going to take the 2-horse search results. Give kudos to the 4-horse Secret Oath. 2-4-6-5 Super. 2-4 in your multi-race. Let's get to the mandatory all stakes pick 5, beginning with race number 8 from Belmont. The 8th race from Belmont. It is the Woody Stephens Stakes. It's a Grade 1 event going for a $400,000 purse. Race for 3-year-olds here. We have a field of 13 horses, a baker's dozen going to the main track. The distance of ground of 1,400 meters, with a distance of ground of 7 furlongs here in the Woody Stephens. 1,400, 7 furlongs here. And, this is always one of the exciting races of the weekend, and always an exciting division. This is the part of the year where we get to my horse couldn't get a mile and a quarter in the Derby. Let's cut him back to 7 and see what happens. My top selection here, I'm going to use a horse that was somewhat on the Derby trail, but then they decided before the Derby he's not going to get a mile and a quarter. Let's try and bring him back. My top selection is the 11-horse Victory Formation. I'm going to go 11-8-4-3 in the superfecta. 11-8-4-3 super. Top selection 11-horse Victory Formation. 3-year-old colt by Taprit. Brad Cox trains. Florent Giroux gets the mount. The horse's most recent outing came in the Bathhouse Row Stakes at Oaklawn, a mile and eighth on the 22nd of April. He finished third by a half a length that day. He was with them early on, but then just kind of hit the wall late off the bench. He might need the race also. He was just flat. I think cutting back to 7 probably doesn't need the lead. Gonna have to overcome a wide post row, but I think he could get the job done and really run a good race here today. 2 back to 18th of February at Fairgrounds, mile and eighth in the Risen Star. Definitely wasn't getting the trip, breaking 13 of 14. He finished 9th by 15 and a quarter lengths. He was wide throughout, and he just wasn't getting into it. Who was it? Bobby Frankel said you could be wide around 1 turn, but around 2 turns, you're really taking a lot out of the horse, and you're not going to win. Or was it Alan Jerkins? One of those 2 guys had a famous saying about a mile and going around 2 turns and not saving grounds. I think it was Alan Jerkins, actually. And I wish I could remember it. But it just wasn't his day to win there. He won the Smarty Jones before that because he had everything his own way at Oaklawn on New Year's Day over the mile. He won by 3 lengths, and when you go 112 and 1 3/4, you're going to win. And he did just that. He really put on a show that day. And then the debut at Keeneland, or excuse me, prior to that, first time winners of Churchill in late November, 6 furlongs optional 100, winning by a neck from a tracking trip. He really took off clear there, and then he broke the main at Keeneland on the front end, winning by 4 3/4 lengths very, very easily. I think cutting back in trip is the right thing. 7 is what he wants to do. I'm going to use him at 10-1. I think your second likeliest winner here is the 8-horse Fort Bragg for Bob Baffert and Joe Rosario. Might be a little awkward in the winner's circle if he wins, but he's getting blinkers on today. He'll be more forwardly paced. He ran his heart out in the Pat Day Mile, cutting back in trip. He stalked. He had the lead. He got caught by General Jim, but this horse, he ran his heart out that day. Prior to that, in the Florida Derby, he was breaking 10 of 12. He had to use a lot to get good position, then crumbled. It wasn't his day to win. And then San Felipe, he just wasn't getting the trip there. He didn't get the trip in the low South Futurity. He won the race after that Santino, or before that Santino, because he got his own way in the front end, 112 3/4. Of course you're going to win on the front end like that, but he wants to cut back and trip. He's going to do it today. He's training well at Santino since the last run. Half mile 46 and 48 and 1, 24th best out of 87, and the week prior 47 and 2 for a half mile. I think he's rearing to go at 5-1. I'll use him on the ticket. The 4-horse General Jim, I love that he closed up from nowhere in the Pat Day Mile, and the winner of the Swale. He jumped up 100 buyer points to win the Pat Day Mile last time out. But the biggest question is, can he perform that race again? We'll give him I would use him in the pick 5 here if you have that extra payroll. I think it's going to pay nicely, so use him. But to recap my selection for the 8th from Belmont, it is the Woody Stevens. We're going to take the 11-horse Victory Formation as a top selection. We'll give kudos to the 8-horse Fort Bragg and the 4-horse General Jim. 11-8, 4-3 Super. 11-8 in your multi-race. Let's head over to race number 9, which was, out of all the races I've handicapped this week at Belmont, well, I lost a card on Thursday at Belmont, so that, I handicapped those races basically for nothing. But, between Friday and Saturday, this is probably the most difficult race to get your head around. And it's gonna play to something weird here, but the 9th race from Belmont, it is the Jaipur Invitational, or Jaipur Stakes. It's grade 1 event going for a $400,000 purse, race for 3-year-olds and upwards. We have a field of 16 horses entered, but only 14 could go to the Widener turf course. The distance of ground of 1,200 meters, or the distance of ground of 6 furlongs of the Belmont Widener turf course. 1,200 meters, 6 furlongs here in the Jaipur, and any of these horses can win, I think. My top selection here, I'm going to go with the number 10 horse here, Big Invasion. I'm going to go 10-12-9-2 in the superfecta. 10-12-9-2 Super, top selection 10 horse Big Invasion. 4-year colt by declaration of war. Christophe Clement trains. Joel Rosario gets out on this one. Most recently ran in the turf sprint, Twin Spires turf sprint at Churchill, 5.5 on the 6th of May, and he finished 7 by 4 1/4 lengths that day. He had a very troubled trip where he checked that day down the backstretch and in the lane. He just couldn't keep up late. It wasn't his day to win. He'll see a better trip on the outside post right here today. He could be a little bit closer. I think he could run a better race and win. Do I think, I believe the world record for 6 furlongs might be in this race. They went 105 and 3. Do they possibly go? They're going to definitely do a sub 107 6 furlongs, I think. Do they go sub 106? That's going to be a big question here today. I think they might. 2 back in the Silks run at Goldstream, 5 furlongs, 18th of March. He won by 3/4 length that day. And again, he stalked a little bit wide, but when he had the turn of foot, he really got the job in a very good race on a turf course that plays more towards speeds than closers. And then the Franklin Simpson Stakes at Kentucky Downs, 6.5, 10th of September. He finished 3rd by 6 1/4 lengths that day. He had a very horrible beginning that day. He closed up well late, but he got beat by better horses, but keep in mind 1, 2, 3, and quite a few others out of that race were all next star winners, so it was a good form out of that one. And then the Mahoney at Saratoga on the Mellon, going 5.5, winning by 3 lengths. Coming home with the 99 buyer wasn't as impressive the race after, but he still really won easily. And then the quick call before that, Saratoga going 5.5 on the Mellon, won by 3 1/4 with a 100 buyer. He really, really got a good trip to win that day. He ran here at Belmont once last season in the Paradise Creek, where he won by 3 1/4 lengths, and again, he stalked a pretty good pace to get the job done. He'll see a good pace to close up with. At 6-1, I'll use him here. I think he gets some redemption for clipping heels last time out in the Twin Spires turf sprint. I think his second likeliest winner is the 12 horse Caravel. Originally, they were going to Royal Ascot, but that got through the wayside. They're going to Plan B here in the Jaipur. Most recently, they unbridled Sydney at Churchill over the 5.5. The horse won by 1 1/4 lengths that day, and from a wide post race, she basically won in a trot. 74 cents a dollar. That was a very good run. Prior to that, facing the boys in the Shakertown in her seasonal reappearance at Keeneland, she won by a head and had to be used a lot that day, but she got the job done in a gritty performance with a 100 buyer. And then a race, she ran her heart out there in the Brewer's Cup Turf Sprint, beating the boys by a half a length in the front end. A career best 107 buyer. Foolish on me and a lot of other people for not having her, because she really took off clear. Since coming to the Brad Cox barn, she's really become a great horse and consistent horse. At 3-1, you have to use her here on the ticket. And also the 9 horse, Nothing Better. I love the place in the Jim McKay Turf Sprint last time out at Pimlico, where the horse, got caught late, but he ran his heart out there, and then he won in the front end at Aqueduct in April in a lounge race that could have been a stakes race. Coming home with a 95 buyer, he ran strongly. He's running once here at Belmont in the past, where he had an okay place in a lounge race here in the fall of 2021, but I think since then he's become a stronger horse. At 8-1, I'll use him on the ticket, but I do think the other two before him are likeliest winner. And may God, if Thin White Duke wins today, may God, help me, because I bet him so many times. He's run 23 times. I might have bet him 23 times. Today I'm not using him, but may God help me if Thin White Duke wins, because I might just, start crying, because today he'll be a massive price, and I'm not picking him because I think the other horses are better than him. I'll bet him next start out Saratoga, where he'll probably win, but here at 6 furlongs, I just can't, against in the Jaipur, I just can't take him. With that being said, I'll probably win, so probably put money on him, but, like I said, he's a horse I just keep going back to, and he just he hasn't won in a while, but, to recap my selection now for the 9th from Belmont, it is the Grade 1 Jaipur. We're going to take as a top selection the 10 horse Big Invasion. Give kudos to the 12 horse Caravel and the 9 horse Nothing Better. 10-12, 9-2 Super, 10-12, 9 in your multi-race. Let's get to the 10th race now from Belmont. The 10th race from Belmont's one of the big ones of the afternoon. It is the Metropolitan Handicap, the Met Mile. It's a Grade 1 event going for $1 million purse, races for 3-year-olds and upwards. We have a field of 9 horses going in the Met, the distance of ground of 1,600 meters, or the distance of ground of 1 mile on the Belmont main track. 1,600 meters and 1 mile here on the main and the Met Mile. And I've seen so many good Met Miles in my lifetime when it was run on Memorial Day weekend, on Memorial Day, Monday. But since they moved it to Belmont Stakes Day, I haven't seen a Met Mile since 2013. So it's going to be the first time in a while I get to see this race in person again. And it's a doozy. I think you're going to, it's a good quality group of horses. My top selection, I love the 5 horse Charge It. I'm going to go 5-1-6-4 in the superfecta. 5-1-6-4 Super, top selection 5 horse Charge It, 4-year-old colt by Tappet, Tom Pletcher trains, John Velasquez gets the leg up. The horse's most recent outing came 22nd of April at Oaklawn, a mile and 8th in the Oaklawn Handicap, and the horse just didn't show up. He finished 5th by 4.5 lengths that day. He stuck, he was very lackadaisical, and just never was comfortable. Cutting back to a 1-turn mile back to Belmont to his home base, I think he could get some redemption and run a better race than he did the last time out. 2 back in the Gulfstream Park Mile at Gulfstream, 1 mile on the 4th of March. He finished 2nd by 1.5 lengths that day, and he might have just stalked a little bit too quick of a pace. He had the lead, Endorse caught him late, but he ran his heart out that day. And then the seasonal reappearance at Gulfstream, mile 16th and op 6-2, winning by 1 1/4 lengths, closing up from nowhere. A 102 buyer, wasn't the fastest race of his lifetime, but he still got the job done there. We all remember the show he put on in the Dwyer last July at Belmont. 1 mile there in the Grade 3 Dwyer, winning by 23 lengths from a tracking trip. He got to the front end, and then he just won in a trot. A 111 buyer. Nothing bad about that race. He ran last year's Derby where he finished 17th by 28 lengths, where he just, he was a little close somewhat early on, but then just completely crumbled. And then he had a very good place in the Florida Derby behind Wyatt Barr, who was running the back of this one today. But, he's improving to this 4-year-old campaign. He's training very well coming to this race than he was going into the into the Oaklawn race. I'll give him a shot at 6-1 here on the ticket that he's going to run a good race. You can't throw out the 1 horse Cody's Wish either. He'll see a strong pace to close up with. Most recently in the Churchill Down Stakes, or Churchill over the 7. He won by 4 3/4 lengths that day, and again he stalked. He got to the front end, and then he just won in a hand ride. A 105 buyer, not the quickest time for him, but he still won easily. And then around 2 turns in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, winning by a head. He had to be used a lot that day, but he still got the race done. And then he won the Forgo, winning by 1 1/4 lengths with a 112 buyer, one of the most impressive races of 2022 2 anywhere in the country. He really took off clear. He's won once here at Belmont in the past. He won the Westchester last year on the absolutely sludgy going, winning by 5. He really took off clear. Came back to running the Hanshin at Churchill on July 4th and winning that quite easily. And then he's been, absolutely killer since then. Training well at Saratoga, half mile drill 46-4. I'll give him a shot. He could definitely win here, but he's going to be very overbet here. You also could give a shot to the 6-horse Zandon. He had a decent place in the Westchester a few weeks ago. Ran horribly in the Scar Mile, and then a decent second in the Pennsylvania Derby and a decent third in the Travers. But he hasn't found the winner circle since last year's Bluegrass. But he's definitely been on the improve. He's run Byers that could definitely win here. He's another horse. I think a 1-turn mile suits him well. Watch out for him at 5-1. It wouldn't surprise me. He could possibly blow up this late pick 4. I'll use him on the ticket, but I really like the other 2 before him. But to recount my selection for the 10th now from Belmont, it is the Metropolitan Handicap, the Met Mile here. Gonna take the 5-horse Charge It, give kudos to the 1-horse Cody's Wish and the 6-horse Zandon, 5164 Super, 516 in your multi-race. Let's head over to race number 11 now from Belmont, the feature turf race of the afternoon. It is the Manhattan Stakes. It's a grade 1 event going for a $750,000 purse, race for 4-year-olds and upwards. We have a field of 10 horses going to the inner turf course. The distance of ground of 2,000 meters, the distance of ground of 1.25 miles on the Belmont inner turf course. 2,000 meters, 1.25 miles here in the Manhattan. My top selection, I'm going to go take the number 8 horse here up to the mark. I'm going to go 8-4-10-5 in the superfecta, 8-4-10-5 super, top selection 8 horse up to the mark. 4 colt by Not This Time, Tom Pletcher trains, Ira Tease Jr. gets the mount. The horse's most recent outing came in the Woodford Reserve Turf Classic at Churchill. Mile in the 8th on the 6th of May, and the horse won by 3 3/4 lengths, and he sat back early, a little bit wide, but when he got the turn of foot, he gamed it out to the wire. A 103 buyer and only a second start against stakes quality horses. He ran terrifically. Prior to that, in the Maker's Mark at Keeneland, 1 mile on the 14th of April, first time stakes quality horses. He is facing a good group of horses. Second place finisher, Modern Games, like we were saying earlier, was a lock-in winner after that. Twice Brewers Cup winner. This horse finished 3rd by 3 3/4 lengths, and he was closing up well behind him that day. Just a little bit too slow on the front end, but he ran his heart out there. And then at Gulfstream, 4th of March, a mile 16th off 6-2, winning by 1 1/4 lengths. He was stupidly wide, but when he had the turn of foot on the outside rail, he really took off clear. Since coming to the green stuff, he's really become a better horse. His buyers have been going up. I like that he gets somewhat closer on this turf course, plays towards speed a lot. I'm going to give him a massive shot on the ticket. I think your second likeliest winner here is the 4-horse Ottoman Fleet for Godolphin and Charlie Appley. William Buick's on this one. Most recently, the Fort Marcy here on the 6th of May. He won by 1 3/4 lengths that day. He sat back early, but he slowly moved his way up, and he went away with it. And course record time, they've only run the about 1 mile and 1/8 trip a few times in the last 2 years, so it's a slight exaggeration of a course record, but he really took off clear late. A 102 buyer, that was a good performance there. Prior to then, the Earl Sefton in Newmarket over the mile and 1/8, he won by 2, and again from a tracking trip, he really put on a show there. And then he ran the Dubai Millennium Stakes Maidan over the 1.25 miles. He finished 3rd by 1 1/4 lengths. Nation's Pride, I think, is just a little bit better horse than him. This horse was just a little bit too out of it. And then the Singspiel over the mile and 1/8, he finished 3rd by 1 1/4 lengths. And again, he just wanted a little bit more of a stronger pace. He's going to love the fast ground that he's seeing today. I like that they've kept him here stateside since the last race. So he's been getting acclimatized to the turf course. At 5-2, watch out for this horse late. And also watch out for the number 10 horse here, Highest Honors, for Chad Brown, Joel Rosario. If there's a deep closer that could win, it could be him. Also, I could see him sitting closer like he did in the Grand Courtier last year, where it was a small field over the 1.5 miles on the Widener, but he finished 3rd by 1 1/4 lengths behind Channel Maker and Soldier Rising. He just kind of stalked. He couldn't get that extra 2 furlongs late, but he ran his heart out there. Came back to run a 4th in the Turf Classic over the 1.5 miles, a 3rd in the Sycamore closing up from nowhere, and a decent 2nd in the Red Smith sitting a little closer. He's running a 2nd off the bench here today. Like I said, from Y Poster, Joel Rosario is a very good pace rider and a closing rider. He knows how to time a race. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets a good front end victory with this one. 20-1, he could easily knock off this pick 4 for us. So we'll use him on the ticket. But to recount my selection for the 11th from Belmont, it is the grade 1, $750,000 Manhattan. We're going to take the 8 horse up to the mark. Give kudos to the 4 horse Ottoman Fleet and the 10 horse Highest Honors. 8-4-10-5 Super, 8-4-10 in your multi race. Let's get to the big 12th 12th race now from Big Sandy. The 12th race from Belmont. It is the Belmont Stakes. It's a Grade 1 event going for a $1.5 million purse. Race for 3-year-olds here. We have a field of 9 horses taking a stroll around the Belmont main track. The distance of ground of 2,400 meters here, or the distance of ground of 1.5 miles here in this year's Belmont Stakes. 2,400 meters, 1.5 miles in the Belmont. And this could be reading stories this week. There was one on Dave Grenning had on DRF.com this week about the future of Belmont. They are getting the new grandstand in the next few years. There could be a possibility in 2024 they run this race, or 2025 they run this race in at Saratoga. Could be a possibility that they run this race at Aqueduct also. It'd be kind of cool, which they ran it in the 60s at Aqueduct. Also, there's a possibility that they might run after this meeting. They knock down half the building and run it here at Belmont again next year, and then completely demolish and build from the ground up. So this could also, you never know, they didn't mention this, but it could be the final Belmont at Belmont as we know it, being the old Belmont. So when I go to Belmont, I'm just gonna take in the surroundings and enjoy it, because things in the future are gonna get a lot brighter here in New York. And also next year we have the synthetic racing, which a lot of people are gonna hate, but I absolutely love. But with that being said, my top selection this year's Belmont, I love the 2-horse Tapit Trice. I'm gonna go 2-7-6-8 in the superfecta. 2-7-6-8 Super, top selection of 2-horse Tapit Trice, throw called by Tapit, Todd Pletcher trains, Luis Saez gets the mount. The horse's most recent outing came the 6th of May at Churchill, 1.25 in the Kentucky Derby, and he finished 7 by 9.25 lengths that day. He was way out of it, which probably cost him. He sat back early, he moved a little bit late, but it wasn't anything spectacular. Coming here, he could slowly get into the race, and I think he could really run a good race. He's bred for a mile through and through. 2 back in the Bluegrass at Keeneland, 1.8 miles on the 8th of April. He won by a neck that day, and he sat back early. He was a little bit wide that day, and he was brushing, verifying that day, but he grinded it out to the winner's circle. Very good, gritty performance, earning a 99 buyer. And then prior to then, the Tampa Bay Derby at Tampa, mile on the 8th and 11th of March, he won by 2 lengths that day, and he basically circled the field. He quickened up nicely, and he kept coming. If you told me at the 3/8 pole he was going to win, I would have said you're nuts. If you told me at the 5/8 pole he was going to finish in the top 3, I would have told you you're nuts. But he really put on a good show that day. And then won around a 1-turn mile at Gulfstream before that first time facing winners. He's been on the improvement, a little bit of a tough trip in the Derby, but coming here today, it wouldn't surprise me if this $1.3 million purchase gets the job done. I'm going to use him on the ticket. I think your second likeliest winner here is would be the number 7 horse here, Hit Show. 3-0 called by Candy Ride, Brad Cox trains, Manny Franco gets the mount. Most recently in the Derby, he ran his heart out there over the 1.25 mile. Breaking from the rail, he finished 5th by 6.25 lengths, and he didn't have a lot of trouble that day. He stalked, he was a little bit wide around the second turn. He just couldn't keep up late, but he ran his heart out. Going a slow 1.5 miles, which I think he could pace himself into the race. He could really run a good race. He's a horse, he's been absolutely improving. Starting off with a 60 buyer, peaking out last time out to a 98. If you go off the buyers, he's sitting on his best race here today, where he'll probably run a 105 buyer or 102 buyer. Before that, in the Wood Memorial, he ran his heart out that day. 1.8 miles at Aqueduct, breaking from 12 of 12, which is very hard to do at Aqueduct. He finished second by a nose. He was just a little bit too wide, which cost him. Lowered miles outpaced him that day. But this horse, he ran his heart out there. And then the Withers at Aqueduct, 1.8 miles and 11th of February, winning by 5.25 lengths that day. He sat back early after not the best beginnings, a little bit wide, but he closed up on a slow pace that day, which was really, really impressive there. And then at Oaklawn in mid-December, 1 mile in a allowance race, winning by 3.5 lengths, closing up from nowhere, a very good run. He looks like he wants to get 1.5 miles. His buyers have absolutely been improving. He's training well. 10-1 watch out for him. The 6-horse Forte, I loved him going into the Derby. Then he got scratched. Big question is, how sound is he? Watching the workouts, he looks like he is about to fall sometimes, pulling up. That's kind of, a bit of a head scratcher. But, he gets the extra race now, break between the now the Florida Derby and this race. Winning the Florida Derby, it looked like it took a little bit of out of him that day. He was a little bit wide, but he put on a show, winning by a length with a 95 bar. A good performance there. Probably his best race lifetime before they came the Fountain of Youth at Gulfstream over the mile 16th, winning by 4 1/4 lengths. He didn't break so well, but he really took off clear there, and then he won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile quite nicely. Keelan closing up from nowhere by 1.5 lengths. He broke his main here at Belmont last season quite nicely. Another horse, he'll slowly get into the race. He could definitely win a 5-2, but the question is, how sound is he? He lost a race last time out, the Derby, where he just couldn't run. That's my biggest question. If he wins, he wins. But I think you can find better prices in this one. I think Hit Show is a very more likely winner because he's been on the improve. He hasn't missed any training, and I think Tappa tries another horse. He hasn't lost any trainings, and he'll get a good trip here today. I'll use Forte on the ticket, but I have a lot of questions about him. For fourth on the ticket, I have the 8-horse Angel of Empire. For some reason, I have a feeling he'll probably go off as the favorite in this race also. He ran a good third in the Kentucky Derby where he was closing up well late, just a little bit too late there. Came home with a 104 buyer. Prior to the Arkansas Derby, he won by 4 3/4 lengths, closing up from nowhere. Very good, strong performance there, and then won the Risen Star quite nicely. And then, he closed up a little bit in the Smarty Jones off of that slow pace. Another horse, his buyers have definitely been improving. Should definitely get the 1.5 here today. It wouldn't surprise me, but I think he's going to get very bet into the ground. I talked about my top 4 here, so we're going to talk about some other horses here. The 1-horse Tappet Shoes, a horse I would possibly use underneath in the pick 4, in the trifectas and supers here. He could get a piece of that. Can he win? He's bred for the trip, but, he'll have to really jump to 10 buyer points to win here. We already talked about Tappet Trice, my top selection. The 3-horse Archangelo, he ran his heart out in the Peter Pan, and then broke the main before that Gulfstream, but he's going around 2 turns for the first time. I just don't know if he's fast enough and as classy as the other horses here. National Treasure, I just don't know if he wants the 1.5 here today. He had everything his own way in the Preakness on the front end, which, he basically walked there. He's not going to get everything his own way here today, and I just think he's probably going to get caught by the horses. The 5-horse Il Miracolo for Antonio Sano, won at Gulfstream mid-May quite nicely, but then, I just don't think he's fast enough against these horses. He'll really have to absolutely freak to get the job done. He'll have to jump at least 20 buyer points to win here, at least. We talked about Forte and Hit Show and Angel Empire. The 9-horse Red Root one, I would use him in the trifectas, maybe a sneaky exacta here. I like the Bathhouse Rose Stakes victory where he closed up, and the place in the Rebel, but he'll have to, he's a horse for underneath. He's like that Mutajiv from a few years ago, who closed up from nowhere to behind American Pharaoh, and who was the horse that closed up behind Justify? He's the kind of horse that like that I would use there for the place. But can he win here? He'll have to have everything his own way and everything to go right here. Like I said, everybody thinks the Belmont's a deep closer race. It's not. It's a horse that could grind it out on the front ends. Deep closers have very hard times winning these races, and they get very overbet. Like this horse will probably get overbet also. But like I said, it's just it's a handicapper's race, I think. But to recap my selections now for the 12th from Belmont, it is the Grade 1 $1.5 million Belmont Stakes. As a top selection here, we'll take the 2-horse Tappet Trice. Gives kudos to the 7-horse Hit Show and the 6-horse Forte and the 8-horse Angel of Empire. I'll go 2-7-6-8 Super, 2-7-6 in the multi-race definitely. Angel Empire, if I have that extra payroll, I'll probably use them also, but 2-7-6, that's definitely going on the pick 4 ticket. 2-7-6-8 Super, that's my top 4. Probably play superfecta also, and why not play for 10 cents, see what happens. But like I said, I love Tappet Trice and Hit Show as co-top selections in this year's Belmont. With that being said, good luck to all. Please follow me on Twitter at HorseRacingKid5 for more selections for race courses around the world, and also join me in a few weeks' time for my Royal Ascot previews here on YouTube. Good luck, everybody, and let's have a good Belmont meeting today.